During this live stream, there will be many opportunities Yeah, thank you for being here. And I hope you're doing well also.
And welcome to Bharak. Bharak says he's just become a Buddhist, so bows to Bharak for entering the path of liberation for the benefit of all sentient beings. It's a wonderful thing to do, and anybody who undertakes the path deserves some amount of basic respect for the decision. So I guess we'll get right into it. Now, someone wanted to know the basic differences between the four lineages of the Kagyu schools. And really when it comes to the 4 and 8 lineages, it's quite a difficult topic because many of the different lineages kind of almost died out or don't exist anymore. But if we just talk about Karma Kagyu in general, if we just talk about that, it might be easier. And also the different people have different ways of counting these. But it all stems back to something we call Marpa Kagyu, really. So Marpa was the original teacher. Marpa traveled to India and brought back the tantric teachings. So really Marpa is kind of a tantric scholar, Vajrayana practitioner and teacher. And his teachings, his methods, are very much associated with the Vajrayana. But that isn't the shape of the modern Kagyu, really. What we have is what is called the Karma Kamsang, as we call our lineage. But it all stems back to its Vajrayana links. So for those of you who are familiar with the Vajrayana, then it seems to be mostly about these kind of tantric practices where you visualize deities, etc. Very high level view. And so if you read the teachings of Marpa, then the view in there is really sky high. It's really difficult to understand. And Marpa himself acted in a kind of very strange way that most Westerners couldn't relate to. In fact, many Westerners say, "Oh, Marpa was terrible. Look at the way he treated Milarepa. He should be put in jail." In modern day, we would put him in jail because he seemed to really give Milarepa a very hard time. So now, Marpa taught Milarepa as his main student. And some of the other students that are 4 main pillars of the Kagyu lineage, then their teachings do still exist, but really it's primarily through Milarepa that we get everything. And even the teachings of Marpa are largely lost in our own lineage, but thankfully the Gelugpa, that's the tradition of the Dalai Lama. They're the most learned amongst the Tibetan Buddhists. And thankfully, then they still have a lot of Marpa's teachings in their, let's say, libraries, I suppose. They still teach them in their universities. And so a lot of what we get from Marpa actually comes through the Gelugpas, which is a bit strange. And part of this was because our own Kagyu lineage was almost completely destroyed. There was a religious war in Tibet, and our own lineage was decimated. They took over all the monasteries and killed thousands of monks, so we kind of lost everything. I'm just going to divert here, because it's a really important point. We tend to see this thing about doing traditional long retreats, right? 3 year, 3 fortnight retreats as being really significant and important, and the way it's systematized. But it's actually quite a new thing. And this came after the religious wars in Tibet. And the theory is that because the tradition was dying out, we had to systematize it and make it formal. Because obviously in the time of Milarepa, then people didn't go into formal retreats. They just disappeared into the mountain, right? That's how the yogis in the past did it. But it's kind of become a formula these days. And also the way that things are taught in shutras and universities has become formalized. And really it's because we're in danger of losing things. So we see the long retreat as being so important, and we also see Vajrayana pujas, right? These sadhanas, where you do prayers, right? So like a Guru Rinpoche and all this.
Well, really, we shouldn't think like that. It's not useful to think like that. What is the root word of Mahayana Buddhism? What is the root word of Theravada Buddhism? What is the root word of Tibetan Buddhism? It's Buddhism. So it is more than well enough to know the teachings of Buddhism and to put those teachings into practice. That is a right thought about the different schools of Buddhism. And with this right thought, you can practice seriously as much as you can, as best as you can. Knowing about the differences between, or having the thought about the differences between Mahayana Buddhism or Theravada Buddhism or Tibetan Buddhism, that is only a matter of putting the practice at the forefront of your life. And Buddhism is not so much an intellectual pursuit as it is a is the audio, maybe the audio will be a little bit better now. I think that it should be. It better be, iPhone. So the main point about this is that what's going on here? Technical check. Seeing, hearing. How is it? So the main point for this is that Buddhism is a practice. If Buddhism is anything, it's a practice. And it's not going to help very much to know details about the differences between other traditions to practice Buddhism. If you want to practice Tibetan Buddhism, you'll have to learn about that through practice. That's the right way to do it. That if you're looking for Buddhism, then you're looking for a practice. And the practice of Buddhism is shared, is common with all the traditions. So if you practice that seriously, keep doing it, keep being more serious about it, and you will learn through your experience of practice the differences in different traditions or schools, depending on where you go, what you experience. Buddhism is not for believers. Buddhism is for practitioners. It's for followers. It's for supporters. It's for monks and nuns. It's not for believers. If you believe in Buddhism, that's not going to help you with anything. If you practice Buddhism, I bet that you will see for yourself what the differences are in the practices that you do from time to time. Check the audio. That's not this body. Hello, check 1, 2. Hello, check. Okay. It's not just you. This is a rampant condition. That people are approaching Buddhism in a intellectual or a philosophical way. We should make sure that it's not a problem for us as serious practitioners. There's no Buddhism, there's no point to Buddhism. There's no reason to get involved with Buddhism if you don't practice it. So please don't be shy if you, oh, please don't be shy if you have any questions to ask. Questions or requests, you can share, you can speak openly at this time. The Buddha, okay, the Buddha has given there's only 5 rules in life as a Buddhist. 5 rules. Don't kill, don't steal, don't lie or speak harshly, don't take don't get drunk, don't get wasted, don't get twisted up in the mind. And the 5th one is about sexuality. Don't commit sexual misconduct, be very careful about sexual activity. The reason for this is that sexual energy and sexual drive is a lot deeper than we tend to talk about or think about. It impacts our lives more than we know. Until you start to work with practicing Buddhism seriously, you're not going to have any idea about how deeply you are affected by desire, how polluted your mind is with desire, with grasping, with attachment, with ignorance. It's not about the West or the East. This sexual energy has a major effect on all parts of the human society and the animal societies as well. Try to stop sexual activity. Experiment with fasting from sexual content, sexual activity. Take a look at how much sexuality, sexual desire is kind of managing or running your life. If you are thinking that you are going to be a spiritual person and serious about spiritual life and finding out what that means, it is essential that you develop a capacity for detachment from sexuality and sensuality, for that matter, as well, is very, very important. And it makes sense why it's like that, because it's that sexual drive is for us to, for beings to reproduce. So it's very deep, it's very important. And this desire can lead us to do all kinds of evil things, all kinds of horrible things. I've spoken about this before, but far too often in the West, especially, sexuality and sexual freedom and sexual expression is put on this kind of pedestal, right? It's like put on top of the trophy shelf. I'm sexually free. I've got a great sex life, this kind of thing. But really, if you look at the human society, if you look at the American society, some of the worst things, the worst activities, the worst actions that can be done from one human to another are directly about sexual pleasure, seeking sexual pleasure. And this kind of depravity and what we could call evilness, right, or horribleness to harm the others is completely rampant in America. Child abuse, for example. America has some of the highest, if not the highest rates of child abuse in the world. Okay, and a lot of that has to do with this out of control drive for sexual pleasure. So, be a liberated person if that's what you feel you need to be, but also examine your mind and examine yourself and get yourself under control. And some of the ways that we do that in Buddhism, some of the practices that we can do is to do some fasting, right? Okay, don't eat for one day. Try it out. Don't masturbate for one day or participate in sexual activities for 1 week or 1 month. I'm not saying to reject sexuality, but we should know about that not being the guiding force for how we live our lives. That's really important. The more that someone can separate themselves from that just constant chasing drive for something or for someone to experience pleasure, the more that someone can be free or open to freedom, open to looking deeply. Because when we're in that state, right? I mean, this is why McDonald's is so popular. This is why 2-day delivery on Amazon is so popular, same-day delivery. This is why these fast food restaurants and these get it to you right away things are so profitable, is because when that desire is there, and especially if you don't have the capacity or kind of like the affiliation with not just believing every thought that you have or I desire something and now I'm going to chase after it. If you don't have a connection to not doing that, then it controls your whole life. So Buddhism is about freedom. The freedom that can be found in reality, or the freedom that is reality, but is not yet found, or realized, or seen. Okay, next question. What you may find as well is that many activities that are primarily about desire and fulfilling a desire, like eating a big meal or having a sexual experience, these activities actually take a lot of energy, a lot of the chi, right? A lot of the subtle energy in the heart, body, mind. So you may very well be able to drag your body to work the next day with a big cup of coffee or what have you. But the heart, the mind, the presence, the awareness is going to be very much reduced. So when we reduce those activities, when we check those activities of masturbation or having a lot of sexual experiences or overeating or drinking or binging on Netflix, movies, TV shows, when we can kind of rein that stuff in, there's a lot more space, a lot more chi for that awareness. We don't have to recover it so much. And when we're in that state of kind of constant exhaustion, it means we're always looking in one way or another to kind of waste time. Because we don't want to do anything that takes effort because we don't have the chi. We don't have the grit or the vibrational energy inside of us to do those things that are meaningful, and especially to not to do those things that are difficult, right? Like that inner work, this inner engineering that we're trying to develop here in the Bodh Gaya, India. So it does take sacrifice, but through that sacrifice, brightness is revealed. And this isn't brightness like a kind of imagery, but it's a clarity, it's a clearness. It's a profundity of clearness and clarity, and this is the way that things are. And being able to be with that and look deeply at that. Reality is reality, but when you stop being involved in all these different things and people and places and situations, etc., and you attempt to look at reality, what's that like? And that's what meditation is about. But if we go into meditation without living in the right way, it's going to be miserable. It's going to be a mess. And when we don't understand that this is real, this is important, this is right, this is true, this is original, this is the way, this is the path, when we don't understand that, we isolate ourselves and we don't listen. We don't make use of opportunities that go outside of our desire and our cultural indoctrination and our social indoctrination. So we need to learn how to go outside of that. And the starting point for learning or developing the power really to go outside of that is look at those activities that are primarily about desire and fulfilling some desire, and cut those down, reduce those, especially when it comes to sexuality, or especially when it comes to attachment to light or attachment to dark. Because there's that part of the mind that says, we turn on lights, we get the candles. Well, you know what? What's your problem with darkness? Why are you so rude to the nature of darkness? The naturalness of it. You get out your flashlight, you get out your fancy wajamabob, and now you're running around putting lights in people's faces. So we actually need to learn how to use the power of nature, natural awareness, natural experiencing that doesn't rely on thought, doesn't rely on concept, it's not looking to you for anything. And it's the most important thing in your life. And you've got to grapple with that as a true Buddhist, as a real Buddhist, as someone who's willing to do the work, wishes to attempt to do the work. Any other questions? Questions or comments? And treasure. This is also to treasure this moment. To treasure what already is. And how do we do that? With mindfulness. With the deep listening coming from the breathing of everything. patience with the process, and try to take it really seriously. And for each and every individual person, taking this path very seriously is going to look completely different. But if you can take my advice on this, really take my advice, take Buddhism seriously. Take dana seriously, take sila seriously, take bhavana seriously. What that means is be generous, follow the 5 precepts, and practice meditation. And take that seriously. Listen to Dhamma talks seriously, often, every day. I'm quite a proud person. That's one of my evils, is I'm very prideful. But I am very proud that I guess it's just 2 of my students from this online work have ordained and become nuns, and completely, devoted their lives to this path. And a number of, members from people who've just come across the live streams or come across some of the talks that I've given have come in person to stay at the meditation center, to train with me, to train with my teacher in Italy, here in India, in America. So it's going to, for each person, it's going to be a little bit different how seriously you take it, but take it seriously and find out that way, find out that path. And that kind of natural evil for me of pride, the sin of pride is a great sin, is one of the reasons that it's, kind of was in my proclivity to close down the Discord server, because I don't want to water that seed within myself too much. Being a leader, being a chief, being in charge, being an overseer, that's not really a position that I want to be in most of the time. And that's my dharma, that's not the position I want to be in most of the time. And loss and failure, or loss, failure or not, is a good medicine for pride. When we go out there and we lose, and we put ourselves out there and we practice seriously and we experience our faults, we're vulnerable. Pride's tentacles, not easy to grasp onto that loss. So we have to eat loss, we have to eat blame, so that we won't be prideful lunatics for our whole lives, so that we will transform and develop and grow. You're a woman, you're trans, you're a man. In one way, that's great, but at the end of the day, who cares? Why do you care so much? You're a woman, you're a man. We have to detach, we have to experience the loss. We can't go back, we can't change the past, but we can change how we work with the loss. There's a lot of idealism out there in the world, and there's only one place for it: the toilet. And that sucks, but that's what we have to deal with. Loss. That everyone that we ever know and ever will know is going to go through things like this. And so we can try to blame or understand or conceptualize about it or gaslight about it. I don't know what people think, but really, we have to eat the loss. And when you learn to eat the loss, that's how you can make use of it rather than thinking about it. Um, our psychology is very, very deep, going to this uh, grasping and attachment, this desire for control, this desire for pleasure, this desire to avoid pain, right? All these things, and only you can be responsible for that. And sometimes we want to blame another person and this blaming other people, it goes to public lynchings. You know what I mean? It goes to horrible, horrible things that we do to one another just because we have a stomach ache. And that's not something that, I want to support or that I believe in. Mindfulness and detachment and doing good deeds more and more. And if you eat something and it gives you a stomach ache, let's hope that your gut biome improves. But if your gut biome doesn't improve, don't eat that. Eat something else. I also experienced a lot of loss about the Discord server. That was, the Discord server that I started maybe 3 years ago, and was leading all of these teachings and recruiting all these people and, the writings and making all these things for it. So I feel a lot of loss about that, but I use that loss to practice more seriously and be more serious about this path. And I hope other people will do that too. Everything is impermanent. The only thing that's not impermanent is impermanence. And the more that we can practice with that and develop a realization of that and with that, the more empowered we will be to do the work that we want to do, whatever that work is. Not just for ourselves, not just for one particular group, not just for one particular time, not just for one particular place, but for everyone, for everything, everywhere, limitlessly. And that is the right understanding to continue. As difficult as it may be. Okay, any other questions before? Okay. Aaron, you've begun to transform your relationship to the feeling of grit in the body and mind when it comes to giving, when it comes to letting go. Well, we've really got to sit and endure as much as we can with that feeling of pain, that feeling of loss, that feeling of the mind that's out of control. After you develop your generosity, you develop your precepts, you develop your capacity to just see the impermanence of thoughts rather than the story about those thoughts. But I actually had that thought. You'll drive yourself crazy that way, right? It's that perfectionism and idealism. Who are you? What are you, God? Drop it. Shut up. I have to tell myself, shut your, be quiet. You know what I mean? You're gonna um, cause a lot of suffering in yourself, Bhante, if you cannot be lighthearted about thoughts that come up and go away. If I identify with all thoughts, I'll be paralyzed in thinking. So that's not the way to do it. That's not the way that I understand impermanence. So once you build up that generosity, once you build up those precepts, so you're kind of living an ethical life. Once you're kind of, it's like yoga. Once you're starting to stretch out a little bit with trying meditation, with listening to guided meditations, with the best teachers you can get, then you can start to really apply that grit. We can apply that seriousness to our practice. And then you see experience, because it's not the wisdom in Buddhism. And this is why monks are so valuable. This is why people support monks. This is why people believe in monks. Because the wisdom that you get in serious meditation over a long term and serious dedication over the long term, it is experiential, it's perspective shifting. Your awareness is very, very heightened, and then things happen in the context of your awareness that that you can't conceptualize. You could explain it, but that explanation would be nothing connected to the experience of that. And once you have the experience of that, the mind shifts, or the awareness shifts, the awareness deepens, right? And then the profundity of that awareness is known, is recognized. And that's the true faith on the path. because you've experienced it. You've experienced miraculous events. And that's what the seriousness of the wisdom in Buddhism is about. That kind of transformation of suffering and experiencing that transformation of suffering. But if you don't have enough grit, if you don't have enough forbearance, if you don't have enough good conditions as well, that's also why monks are revered and Buddhist temples and meditation centers are revered, because you also have to have particular conditions, right? For these insights, for these realizations, for these experiences to happen. Even if you've got a good mind, you're doing some meditation, that's great, but the conditions may not be there. You're not associating with wise people, or the overall context of your life is a heavier weight than your seriousness about mindfulness and detachment. And so going to those meditation centers or Dhamma talks or Buddhist temples, even if it just gives us a short time, a short space, where we can go outside of the perimeter of that context that just kind of overloads us and hangs over us. You know, all those regrets and, oh, I could have done that. I would have done that, you know. Well, here we are. It's not about how the world sees us. It's not about the success in our life, material success. It's not about what we can do tomorrow or what we can do yesterday, what we did yesterday. It is about this moment and this one true person. That's what you have. That's what you've got. And that's what you need to work with. Be at peace with this everything that you call yourself. Because this is it. This is all it's ever going to be. This is all it ever has been. This is it. And that brings a song to mind, but I couldn't sing a song right now at this time, in this robe, at this temple. It's not appropriate. So we continue on alone together. And the fruits of the spiritual life have nothing to do with being recognized by other people, or being a chief, or being in charge, or having running something, managing something, being important for other people. That's not where the success is in spiritual life. So we have to learn to get our priorities in check and then go along the lines of those priorities so that we stay true to our heart. It doesn't mean it's perfect, but it means we're constantly reconnecting to the way, the middle way, that truly makes sense for us, and we're really serious about what we really are serious about. And we don't put that on anybody else. We don't put that responsibility on anybody else. We try to help, Try to serve, try to stay connected, and use the community for mindfulness and detachment, for doing all kinds of good deeds. But use only, or don't use only. And in that, freedom is accessible in just this, Bhante, what's going on? Why are you moving that light? There's going to be a new Reddit post about me tomorrow. Bhante Varrapanyo is moving a light around his head. He's, what's going on? What, he's hypnotizing people. Bhante Varrapanyo is hypnotizing people with a light on his live stream, It just is this. And your life is just this. So we have to first we have to learn how to stop coping about that reality. Okay? This is it. That's a samurai sword, that's a Mongol empire, that's where's Genghis Khan's treasure. Okay? It's just this. And when we stop coping and making up excuses and, doing all these things for the wrong reasons, we will have enough energy to start doing things for the right reasons and doing the right things. And that is doing all kinds of good deeds. Generosity, kindness, friendliness, researching more about childism. Okay, who's going to do a childism advocacy project? That's really interesting work, the childism work. But I'm very busy right now, so I don't have time for that. Okay, any other questions before I go away? I've appreciated everyone's presence and questions so far. And it's okay, what did Johnny Cash say? He said, when you're going through hell, keep on going, keep on singing. And as long as we make use of the very simple Buddhist directives, it's gonna work 100%. So put it to use. And if it doesn't work, you let me know and we'll talk about it. Where did people lose? Well, that's one of the big things. We don't have good communication anymore. So learn to communicate about the things that you are serious about, or were serious about, or may be serious about in the future. These are all great opportunities to share from the heart and to listen from the heart. And if you won't do that, if you won't communicate about things that are really meaningful to you, or were very meaningful to you, or possibly will be very meaningful to you in the future, then what are you ever going to communicate about? What are you ever going to open your heart up to? And when are you ever going to do it? Because this is the only chance that we get. Okay. Namaste, sadhu, sadhu. sadhu, sadhu.